Good evening, good evening, good evening for just a few minutes. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. If we could just, a few minutes of attention, please. Tonight we are celebrating the award that we give to those who have made a contribution to international excellence in election administration, to people who have made a real difference both within their country and then around the world. And it is my privilege today to first give a little bit of background about the award and then to talk for a brief second about why we're all here. The award is named the Joe Baxter Award. Joe Baxter was a distinguished public servant for the DC Board of Elections. Believe it or not, for most of the history of the United States, the citizens of the District of Columbia did not have the right to vote in any election. They did not vote for president, they did not vote for their mayor, they did not vote for city council. They were effectively disenfranchised in the greatest democracy in the world. Joe Baxter was the public servant who, when the citizens of the District of Columbia were first allowed to vote for president and vice president, and then there was an architecture for a system called Home Rule, which allowed the citizens of the District of Columbia to elect their own mayor, to elect their own members of city council, to elect their own school board. Joe Baxter was the public servant at the DC Board of Elections who created the architecture for the voting process here in the district. After a long and distinguished career, he decided he was tired of working in the District of Columbia, and he actually joined IFES. And he helped write the election code, one of the election codes for Nigeria, the election code for Ghana, for a number of other countries in Central America, and he became the mentor to many of those colleagues of mine whose books we now read. And if you look at them, for example, Mike Yard's book that was passed out this morning, you will see in the acknowledgments and a special acknowledgement to Joe Baxter. And so 4 years ago, we created the Joe Baxter Award. That award is given to an individual who has been nominated. We put this nomination out. We had over 200 nominations from people around the world. That process is then, those nominees are then evaluated. We came down to a group of 4 finalists. Those finalists were then presented to our board of directors, and our board of directors voted. So this is a very serious process. And frankly, now that all of you know about it, I suspect we'll have 400 nominees next year. Yes, yes. And you're going to nominate yourself. I know you. I know you. Okay. So this award to IFES is a statement about what one of our founding best colleagues helped do in terms of election administration and fairness around the world. And it is what we all aspire to as professionals in this field. This year has special significance to us because we're celebrating our 25th anniversary. It also has special significance that we are hosting with all of you the largest election program we have done in the 20 years of trying to do this election program. And I think the quality of engagement, the quality of attendance, starting yesterday, but we had a room that was still cooking at 5:30 this afternoon with people who said, no, I've got one more thing to say at 5:30, and the bar wasn't even open. So the engagement, the relationships, the networking that we wanted to see happen among all of you as professionals and with us has been a tremendous success, and we have a great day tomorrow. We have a great, great day tomorrow. Now, in presenting the award, I have asked Sarah Mendelson, who is the Deputy Assistant Administrator for USAID, responsible for the USAID's Bureau for Democracy, Conflict, and Humanitarian Assistance, who has spent the last 20 years in projects involving democracy, human rights, and governance. Our professor from Russia might recognize her because some of her original work was in Russia. She has been with the Center for Strategic and International Studies. She has been with the National Democratic Institute. She is now with USAID. She has been the partner of IFES in so many ways, in so many places, that we are particularly honored today that she would come and present the award. Sarah?
Thank you so much. As a resident of the District of Columbia, I'm especially thrilled to be here. It would be terribly tragic if tomorrow I, in doing this, did not have also a voice and the ability to vote. So I'm especially thankful to Joe Baxter for the work that he did. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to be here. It's a thrill to see all of you. Congratulations to IFES on the 25 years and the hundreds of people that you've brought together. I'm particularly honored to be presenting the Baxter Award tonight to Christian Monsod. Mr. Monsod is the former chairman of the Philippine Commission on Elections, the founder and honorary chairman of the Legal Network for Truthful Elections, and the pioneer of the National Citizens Movement for Free Elections. And so tonight we're really celebrating this lifelong contribution and leadership to building democracy and promoting human rights. This is an occasion to recall that the Philippines in the late 1980s and throughout the 1990s was at the vanguard of what we call the third wave of democracy. We hope that we're on a fourth wave of democratization, and we know that if that's so, IFES is going to be a huge partner in that. But during this tumultuous time, members of the Cory Aquino government and leaders like Mr. and Mrs. Monsod faced enormous challenges in establishing democracy, and USAID is proud to have been a partner in those historic events, along with IFES. In 1986, when the Philippines took the first major step towards democracy, Mr. Monsod was Secretary General of the National Citizens Movement for Free Elections, also known as NAMFREL. You can imagine that that might have been a sort of scary moment, so you're a very brave man. This organization, under Mr. Monsod's leadership, played a critical role in the historic 1986 elections. These are elections that people all over the world refer to and speak about as breakthrough elections. Mr. Monsod is also honored here tonight for his role in reshaping electoral administration in the Philippines. Throughout his tenure, he remained focused on building a transparent process, ensuring greater participation of traditionally marginalized populations. This is an enormously important aspect of the work that IFES also does, and for which we're very grateful. It's a huge priority for USAID, making sure all voices are counted. During his time as chairman of the Philippine Commission on Elections, his leadership, vision, managerial skill, and independence were instrumental in rebuilding the integrity of the commission and public confidence in the commission's ability to deliver credible elections. In 2007, Mr. Monsod helped found the Legal Network for Truthful Elections, known as LENTE. LENTE is a nonpartisan nationwide network of lawyers, law students, paralegals, and other trained volunteers in the Philippines who engage in election monitoring work. This work is observed and replicated throughout the world. It's a real example of excellence in this field. During the 2010 elections, more than 20 years after those pivotal 1986 elections, LENTE representatives were out in full force. The Philippines is a country of almost 100 million people and more than 7,000 islands. You can imagine, for those of you who have been in the business for a very long time of running elections, that's a particularly unique challenge. And you can imagine the logistical nightmare. LENTE representatives rose to the challenge in the midst of scorching hot weather and delivered a professional performance that helped strengthen Philippines' democratic election process. As the founding chairman of LENTE, Mr. Monsod continues to be a powerful force in shaping the organization's direction and inspiring the younger generation to continue democratic reforms in the Philippines. One of the great challenges we often have is the next generation forgets the struggle, so it's incredibly important that you have that connection with them. The 2012 Baxter Award recognizes your commitment and dedication to democracy, your contribution in modernizing Philippines' electoral system, your track record in upholding the rule of law, and your persistent voice in claiming social justice for Philippines' marginalized groups. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating the 2012 recipient of the Baxter Award, Mr. Christian Monsod.
One more picture, all right. Your remarks, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kelly, Mr. Sweeney, Ms. Mendelson. I am deeply honored at being given the Josie Baxter Award for the 2012 by the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. I thank its board of directors and its Philippine office for this unexpected honor. It is a most welcome boost to the task of nation building, of which IFES has been a valued partner through the years. I accept this award as an affirmation by an acknowledged international expert of the pioneering efforts of the Philippines to modernize its election system. I accept this award as a tribute to the spirit of volunteerism that is the moving force in all our efforts at reform as a nation. Whether in mobilizing 500,000 ordinary volunteers to protect the ballot, or in empowering the basic sectors in their quest for social justice. Volunteerism at its finest is people power. Free, fair, and regular elections is really about social justice, with the ballot being the only right in a democratic system where everyone can be truly equal. But social justice is also about social reform, where the goal is not equality, but equity, to make sure that nobody is left behind by development. Guns and goons kill in elections, but poverty also kills. It is slow death from hunger, from diseases that we thought no longer existed, from the loneliness of a life with an empty future. It is also the dying of dignity. Clearly, our political and economic development must go hand in hand with social reform, not only because social justice is a compelling moral issue, but because conclusive empirical evidence tells us that sustained high economic growth is not possible unless we also address the problem of inequality. In other words, social justice makes good economic sense as well. And that means not only income reform, quality education, universal health care, and livelihood opportunities, but also asset reform, which is primarily about land and natural resources. Reforming our election system has been a rocky journey for us, from one that was misused by a dictatorship to stay in power, to a manualized system that was so tantalizingly vulnerable to cheating that few politicians could resist it. Certainly, the overdue nationwide adoption in 2010 of an automated system was a signal achievement widely appreciated by our voters for reporting credible results within hours of the vote. But my colleagues from the Philippine Commission on Elections, some of whom are here today, know from the lessons of 2010 that the automated system needs major enhancements, especially on such issues as internal rigging, auditability, and disenfranchisement. And it cannot be vendor-driven. Moreover, systemic problems, which may be different in our countries than in the United States, need equal, if not more, attention. What's the point of an accurate and speedy count when what is being counted are votes that have been devalued by 1, the improper, even illegal use of money, including government funds, dysfunctional political parties, warlordism, and entrenched political dynasties. Yet, despite its shortcomings, our people overwhelmingly prefer elections for choosing or changing their leaders as against a military takeover, a revolutionary government, a self-serving revision of the Constitution, or a people power upheaval. To them, elections is about political power that they did not have in a dictatorship, and they vote with a high turnout of about 75%. But to improve their lives, the people say that they rely only on themselves with the use of people power in their own communities. They no longer want to go to the streets to serve the agenda of politicians. This is the changing paradigm of people power. It's a good omen for the future, but there's still a challenge to democracy to make good on its promises. In 1986, when we liberated ourselves from martial rule, the rich and the poor stood side by side in a spontaneous moment of solidarity like no other in our history. And we promised one another that we would bring our nation to greatness with a better future for all. But today, mass poverty is still with us, and income inequality has not changed in 26 years. We have not done very well by our poor, and we know this must change. In the battle for change, legal activism and intelligent advocacy are more effective than sloganeering and street action. Hence, the continuing dialogue with the COMELEC on electoral reform and civil society support for the COMELEC's effort to overhaul a seriously flawed implementation of the party list system in our House of Representatives. Hence, the example of volunteer lawyers crossing the social divide to help the poor get land that they can call their own, decent housing, the protection of their fishing grounds from poachers, and of their ancestral lands from the environmental degradation of mining. In 2006, volunteer lawyers took then-President Arroyo to court on her attempt to circumvent the constitutional term limits by revising the Constitution itself. The Supreme Court ruled against Arroyo by a very close vote of 8-7, but 10 of the justices she appointed split 5-5 on the legality of her people's initiative. In 2010, volunteer lawyers also fought the family of our incumbent, President Aquino, in the courts for the distribution to the farmers of the largest sugar plantation in the country, which the family had avoided for 23 years. In April this year, the Supreme Court, by a vote of 14-0, including the 3 appointees of Aquino to the court, finally ordered the distribution of some 5,000 hectares to about 6,000 farmers, a decision which has been accepted by our president and is now being carried out. These are certainly notable victories. Unfortunately, there are not enough of them to change the national landscape because our society is still in the grip of a feudalism where many in the leadership elite subscribe to a discredited trickle-down economics that preserves their privileges and widens the gap between the rich and the poor. We know this must change if we are to build a just and progressive society. We know that this journey takes time and is never easy, but making the journey is half the battle won, and we shall keep on trying again and again in isolated rural areas and in the majestic halls of justice, and in elections after elections after elections, until we get the country we deserve. Thank you and good evening.
First, let me recognize the attendance of the Philippine ambassador who worked for our awardee in the back rooms in the 1986 revolution. Mr. Ambassador. Secondly, let's have a very large round of applause for the bride of our awardee, who has sacrificed so much in the name of democracy. Last round of applause for a man who has made a difference in his country and has made a difference in how we administer elections and deliver democracy to voters around the world. Please join me in recognizing our awardee.